Hey guys, it's Elli. Welcome back to Infertile AF, the podcast. This is episode 17 called Elli. So I learned a lot today talking to Elli. She is an American living in Paris, and she tells us how different infertility is in France versus in the United States. You're not going to believe some of the things that they do over there that are so awesome in support of women. And she fills us in on all the different things she tried over the years and all the different routes she went down. I could relate so much to so many of the things that she did. So this is a really good one. She's so cool. So thank you, Elli, for talking to us. And thank you to our mutual friend, Sarah, for introducing us. Hope you guys like this one. Without further ado, this is Elli's infertility story. So hi, Elli. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So you are in Paris.
I am.
That's cool. I'd love to hear why and when you moved to France. And also thank you so much for doing this and for reaching out, and we'll get into your whole story. But
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for wanting to hear the story. I think you're doing a great thing here.
thank you. So tell me about life in Paris.
Paris is good. We've lived here for about 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
In 2007, my husband and I are both from Austin. We met there, moved here so that I could do research for my PhD. We met while I was getting my PhD at the University of Texas at Austin. And I was going to come over for a year to do research to finish up my PhD. And we had been together for a couple years at the time, and he was ready for a change. So we moved to Paris. We thought it was just going to be for a year at first, but we both ended up finding jobs, and here we are 12 years later.
You've written about your infertility journey, and you said that you and your husband didn't talk that much about having kids until your late 30s, and then you went off the pill around 38. So tell me about that and just your whole vision of like what your family was going to be and how you felt about having kids in general.
Yeah, it's a good question. We met when I guess I was about 32, so he would have been 34, and we met and fell in love, and it wasn't like we said we didn't want kids or we said we wanted kids. I don't know. It was just something that we didn't talk about. We just kept putting off. And then finally, I guess we got married when I was 37. And then about a year later, we thought, well, should we do this, I guess? Because I'm 38 now. And if we want to, we should probably decide now. So we kind of just sat down and talked about it. I mean, I remember the day very clearly. We sat down and had a conversation and talked about the pros and cons. And at the end of it, we thought, yeah, let's do it.
Can you tell me a little bit about that pros and cons list? Do you remember what was on it?
Yeah, I remember very well. It was, at the time we had been living in Paris already for about 5 years, and we were having a great expat life. We were both working as professors, so we had an academic schedule. So we had a lot of vacation. We were living in Europe and really enjoying, weekends in Lisbon and Rome. And one of the big things was are we going to be okay with giving that kind of lifestyle up?
Mm-hmm.
That would be a huge change, obviously, with a kid. And we also talked about the environmental impact. The world is a very overpopulated place. And both of us thought, do we want to bring another human into this world? Kind of discussion like that. And then on the other side, it was just, we just thought it would be really fun.
Mm-hmm.
We had a lot of friends at that time who had already had kids and were starting to have kids. And it looked like fun. And it just looked like it was something just as human beings, we thought we want to experience this. It's kind of the most human thing you can do, right? Reproduce.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought we want to have a life where we experience this thing. So let's do it.
Mm-hmm. So once you started trying, did that put any pressure on the relationship, or what happened?
No, at first. No, yeah. when we started
first
trying.
It's fun, right? You're like,
right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, even after that conversation, we obviously weren't in any hurry, because that conversation, I remember, was in summertime, and we thought, okay, well, we're going to Thailand for Christmas this year. Let's wait till after that, and then I'll get off the pill. So yeah, I went off the pill. I remember it was January. Let's see, it was January 2012. And yeah, I was just like, okay, let's do it. Because of course, everybody in retrospect is very naive in these situations. I thought, I'll go off the pill and we'll get pregnant, and won't that be great?
Right. I love that you wrote, like, if you stop taking the pill, the opposite will happen. So it's just gonna be
Yeah.
really easy, which
Well, talk about being naive. I mean, there's this thing, the pill is this amazing thing that has liberated, so many women from being baby machines or whatever. So you take this pill and you don't get pregnant. And I think for me anyway, it gave me this idea that you actually have control over your fertility. And
Mhm.
so you control both sides of it, was what I would think. If you control not having children, you can also control having children,
Right.
because you have control of your fertility. And isn't that great? And I mean, I was 38, so I definitely had the age thing in my head, but I I think I had it in my head always that 40 was like the big barrier,
Mhm.
like you're fertile until you reach 40, and then like the day after you turn 40, all of a sudden your
Right.
infertility goes down,
Yeah.
which
Why do
is,
you think 40 was in your head?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, everything I've read since, of course, says it starts to decline at 35.
Mm.
But I don't know. I had this number 40 in my head. But even with that, I had two very good friends. My best friend was one of them, who had gotten pregnant after 40. And I thought, yeah, I'm 38, but that still leaves us 2 years till I turn 40. So that's all going to be fine. And I was healthy, I am healthy, and
Mhm.
exercised, ate well. So you have this idea in your head that, yeah, it's all good. I'll go off the pill and we'll get pregnant.
Right. So
Because on the other side too, I'd taken the pill for 20 years. It's like,
Mhm.
why was I even taking the damn thing at the end of the day?
Right. Good point.
I
Yeah.
got so pissed off about that afterwards. I was like, after we'd been trying for a while and I couldn't get pregnant, I thought, why the hell was I taking that thing even? It
Yeah.
was such a pain, and
Is
it
that
wasn't
like
even doing anything, obviously.
it's like, is it a big pharma scam that we all like fell into?
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
I mean, I started taking the pill when I was probably like 15 and
Yeah, I started at
was on it
18.
also for like 20 years.
Yeah, exactly. I was on it for 20 years.
Yeah. So had you been going to any doctors at this point or specialists, or were you just kind of
No,
okay?
I I waited. I didn't. I mean, I talked to my general practitioner when I was thinking about getting pregnant and going off the pill, and he said, "Okay, well, here, start taking some folic acid, and let me know when you get pregnant."
Mm-hmm.
And I went off the pill, and the months started ticking away, and I realized after the fact, I had a real mental block with going to see a fertility specialist, and with doing all the tests that one does to see how the hormone levels are and everything. I didn't do that till about a year in. I just had this kind of mental block against medical intervention for some reason. I wanted to just, as everybody does, I wanted it to happen naturally.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it was after about 6 months of trying that I thought, okay, maybe I should start Googling some things.
Mm-hmm.
But I still kind of took a really natural approach to it. I kind of started looking at, effects of diet. I thought maybe I should cut back on my drinking,
Mm-hmm.
um, things like that. I just kind of started Googling how to boost your fertility in a very general way.
Right. And gosh, you can go into such a wormhole with all of that stuff.
Oh my God.
But
I
let's
I
talk about
I
some of
think
the
I
things.
went down every hole on the internet during the whole process. The
Right.
internet is your best friend and your enemy.
It's so funny. I totally related to this article that you wrote for The Cut because I tried so many of the same, and even the way you described it, like, so tell me about acupuncture and hippy dippy midwife and essential oils. And you even went to a psychic, which I did too, which made me laugh.
Oh, I mean, I don't know if I think you don't have enough time for me to talk about
No,
everything I
we do.
did.
I was
It's
tell me
just, I
something.
did everything. I mean, if you Google it, I did it.
Yeah.
I went to a hippy dippy midwife a friend had recommended, and she massaged my feet with essential oils, and prescribed some drops that were other essential oils and asked me about my childhood, and that was kind of the first thing I did. And it was great. It feels great to have your feet massaged no matter what the situation, right?
Right.
It can only help.
Right.
And then, I talked to another psychic, kind of a psychic healer, and who a friend had recommended, who, told me about my past lives and how that was creating blockage. And the whole time too, part of me, I mean, I have a very analytical brain to begin with, and part of me is just like, yeah, whatever, okay. But this other part of me is like, what if she's right? What if I'm missing out on this thing? And that's what happens. And as I'm sure you realized, you reach this point where you're like, I can't afford not to try everything. Like, I can't afford not to eat pineapple core. Like, why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I eat maca root? Like, why wouldn't I change my diet? Why wouldn't I do this or that? Because what if that's the one thing that's going to make the difference?
Yeah. Tell me about pineapple core. It's supposed to help with I think it's like a blood thinner, and it's just supposed to help after a
general circulation. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, remember, I did, everything. Like,
I remember I went like deep into Chinatown and got this like woo-woo tea that I was supposed to drink, 3 times a day. And it tasted like dog shit. And it was the worst. And I would like choking it down, but I was like, this has to work. It's so bad. It has to work.
Yes. But the acupuncture that went along with it, I really enjoyed. That actually did help relax me in a very general way and calm my my brain that was just reeling all the time.
Right. I'd love to get into, because I haven't spoken to anybody in France yet for the podcast, but I'd love to talk about just in general, the French kind of perspective on infertility, and like, what were you noticing, like culturally, is it different there than you would think it is in the US?
Just the fact that infertility treatments are covered by the national health care just makes it a whole different game over here, really. I cannot imagine having gone through it all while also having to worry about what it costs.
Right. So tell me what the deal is. Is it that fertility treatments are covered in France until one's 43rd birthday? Is that what it is?
So until a woman turns 43 years old, she can have 6 artificial inseminations and 4 IVF tries. 4 tries at IVF.
That's incredible.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So it just removes this whole part of the stress.
Right.
That you don't have to worry where the money for the the next IVF is going to come from. You don't go into your savings. It's just considered another medical procedure over here. So that part is fantastic.
Right. So are there people who move to France specifically for that reason?
Yes, I think that, well, in Europe anyway, apparently Spain is the big infertility destination.
Okay.
Which I learned also through this, but kind of for some of the same reasons. But I remember going for some blood tests for, I don't know, one of the umpteen procedures I had done. And the woman who was taking my blood was talking about how there were several women who would take the train over from England, take the Eurostar over like super early in the morning to have blood work done and do their procedures in France, and then take the train back that night to London. It's like 2.5 hours on the Eurostar to London,
right?
Because it was a lot cheaper and more accessible here in France.
Okay,
so yeah, it does happen. There is like traveling for fertility treatments. Yeah.
Okay, so what was happening in your life?
Like I said, it took me about a year in until I even did the general tests, to make sure everything was going okay, like hormone levels and everything was fine. And I did an ultrasound, a pelvic ultrasound. Everything was fine, no red flags or anything. And then I think a year and a half in, I actually went to a fertility specialist who was recommended by a friend, and he actually started just with injectables, meaning you just do the shots, which stimulates stimulates your ovaries, but you don't do an artificial insemination or anything. Then you just they follow the development of your eggs, and basically they tell you when you should have sex. basically.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And you do like a trigger shot, like you stimulate ovarian production, and then they follow the development, and then they tell you when to do the trigger shot, and they tell you like, okay, and then go for it for like the next 48 hours.
Okay.
So I did a couple of those. I don't even know if those are really done in the States. I think so.
I haven't heard of that actually.
I think Clomid is the drug they use in the States for that.
Gotcha. Okay. Yes.
So I did a couple of those, and which were, pointless as far as I'm concerned, especially at my age. But whatever, I'm not the doctor.
Right.
And it wasn't until 2 years after I went off the pill that I did the first artificial insemination, and I ended up doing 3 of those over like a period of 7 or 8 months.
Okay, and none of them took.
And they didn't take.
Yeah.
And those are also a little bit, I don't know, pointless, I think.
I kind of
woman over 40.
Yeah, I don't know if it's controversial, but I kind of feel like that too. Like I did a couple of those too, and I was like, really? I don't know.
Yeah, I know. So, and then that was with the first doctor that I saw.
Okay,
who I didn't love.
Okay, so yeah, you were saying that he seemed a little condescending. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, he was very condescending. He looked, he's just so stereotypically French, and I don't know what that means to a lot of people, but he was like, super suntanned and like long hair, kind of always, he looked like he had just gotten off a boat always, like, like kind of like windswept, like this, I don't know, it's a very French look to me.
Yeah.
And he was a little bit condescending, and like I would email him questions, I remember, and he would answer me, and his emails would be in all caps, and I would be like, why are you yelling at me?
He's like, I'm on a boat. It's hard to
exactly. Like, that's because that's the way it is, in all caps. I was like, oh God, please stop.
Wow.
He had a little sign hanging in his office that said, for some reason in English, it said, "Want kids? Take mine."
Oh, geez. In his fertility
office, and he's a fertility doctor in Paris. And he had this sign in English, and I just always thought, my God, that's a little bit insensitive, don't you?
Yes. Oh my God.
Anyway, I was just like, okay, this is not working. And I also talked to him after the third IUI, and I said, at this point I was 41 and a half. I asked him, shouldn't we maybe be doing IVF? Mm-hmm. And he was like, oh no, the IUIs are fine. Let's continue with that. So at that point I thought, no, I think I'm going to change doctors.
Yeah.
So I did. I changed doctors and went to this other man who was basically the complete opposite. He was just really, really sweet and kind, and he listened. He was not condescending at all. Mm-hmm. He was also one of the literally like the best IVF specialist in France, was one of the first ones to do it in France. So once I saw him, he, I just instantly thought he was just such a kind, sweet man.
Okay.
That I wanted to work with him, and he agreed that yes, we should do IVF.
Okay. So were they saying like physically, like that there was any sort of issue, or was it just mostly like an age thing, or like had you been diagnosed?
Everything was fine. I mean, at this point I was 41. My numbers were good. I don't remember the what is the thing they test for, FSH, which is supposed to show your ovarian reserve or something, and AMH. Those numbers were all fine for a 40-year-old. They wouldn't have been fine for a 20-year-old, but they were, yeah. And okay. I reacted well to the drugs and the ovarian stimulation. So yeah, on the surface, no, there was nothing.
Okay, so let me ask you this: how are you mentally, like, doing at this point through all of this? Was it hard on you? Was it taking a toll on your relationship?
I was a total and complete mess.
Okay.
I got
relate to that. Tell me more.
I mean, a total mess. Mm-hmm. I mean, I at this point, we're almost 3 years in when I did the IVF, but backing up a bit, yeah, after about a year, I started to get really depressed. Mm-hmm. I was obsessed. It was all I thought about. Mm-hmm. I mean, I look back and I don't like that person. I became negative, I was jealous of friends, and, every pregnancy announcement from somebody I knew would just send me into a spiral of depression, which is which I'm ashamed of. It's a shameful thing that you get in this depression spiral, and it you can't feel joy for your friends at a certain level. And that
Yeah.
was hard. That was
You know
really
what?
hard.
It's so common though. I mean, now that I'm
It
like
is.
more immersed in this community of like infertility and on these, Instagram mostly, there's so many people talking about how hard it is to see these pregnancy announcements. And I guess on Facebook now they do a thing where it's like, who's going to get pregnant this year? And they list all these people's names. And it's just like,
Oh,
all
good
the
Lord.
social media stuff is like really hard to bear. So I get it.
At one point on Facebook, I don't look at Facebook so much anymore, but at one point, there was a pregnancy announcement on Facebook. It was just a friend of a friend too. And it just triggered me into a really, really bad depression. And I had my husband change my password on Facebook
so you
that
couldn't
I
look
could
anymore.
not get on it if I wanted to.
Yeah.
And I had to take a break.
Yeah.
But it was bad. I was depressed, and it took a huge toll on our relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I would not have wanted to be married to me at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I got my period on a day when we had some sort of social engagement planned, I couldn't go. My husband would have to cancel or show up without me and make an excuse. And
Mm-hmm.
I went to a really negative place. And it took a big toll on the relationship. I think there was a time, which was a few months before we did IVF, there was a time when I wasn't sure we were going to make it. And we did, and thank God. And my husband was amazing through all of it. I mean, he was really supportive and understanding, stayed positive for all my negativity.
Mm-hmm.
And he was fantastic. And I think this is also a theme. My husband's case, he spent so much time and effort and emotional energy taking care of me that he couldn't take care of himself. And I mean, not in a bad way, he was fine, he was functioning, but he had to kind of stifle his own emotion just to be able to deal with all of mine.
Mm-hmm.
Just to get through it. And he the men or the partners, I think they're also going through it. It's not happening in their body, but obviously they're also going through it, and I don't know, they get ignored a bit. And what turned it around for me mentally anyway was I kind of reached rock bottom where I realized I can't go on like this. I can't let my period or a friend getting pregnant or something like that send me to bed for 2 days. It's just, it's untenable. And that's when I started seeing a therapist about it. And it was somebody who practiced and taught mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
And that helped me. I think that's what saved me. I started meditating, and meditation from a kind of a mindfulness perspective, and it saved me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't recommend it enough for anybody who's going through it.
Yeah. Is that still something like a tool that you use now? Like,
yeah, I try to go back to it every now and then. And it's even just going back to it for a couple days, it's like a booster. It helps a lot. It helps a lot.
mm-hmm.
Because what it did was, I mean, the pain and the devastation was still there. The pain was still there every time I got my period, but I was able to just live the pain for what it was and move on a little, and then move on.
Right.
It wouldn't just absolutely cripple me.
Right.
I was able to look at it and say, okay, this is what it is. It sucks. Oh my God, this sucks. And let's keep going.
Right. So you said that you were kind of terrified to start IVF. Can we talk about what happened when you did?
Yeah. Well, I was scared because, with IVF, I mean, that's kind of, that's it, right? As far as having a biological child.
Right.
And also I was kind of up against the clock with the treatments being covered in France. I was almost 42 when we did IVF. But we did it. And the first cycle, we did a fresh transfer. So we did a retrieval and then did a 3-day transfer right after. And it didn't work.
Okay.
which was
So I think you said you had
devastating.
gotten like 9 eggs, right? And
Yeah,
all
yeah.
fertilized?
Yeah, the numbers were all pretty good again for my age and the
Mhm.
perspective of my age. We got 9 eggs, and yeah, and all 9 of them fertilized, which is rare. Even our doctor was like, "Yeah, that's pretty interesting." He was surprised.
So was
And
that
which,
did that make you feel hopeful?
well, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But it also begs the question, like, well, what has been happening this whole time? Because obviously, like, our stuff likes one another. Like when it gets together, it does what it's supposed to do.
Uh-huh.
So what was happening, in me that either our stuff wasn't getting together or I don't know. So they all fertilized, but then at that point, 6 were still growing.
Mm-hmm.
We're still developing. And we transferred 2. And then they were able to freeze 2 more at the 5-day mark.
Mm-hmm.
So the fresh transfer didn't work, which was devastating. But
Yeah.
as sad as it sounds too, it's like you reach this point where you're just like, yeah, okay, it didn't work, just like all the other stuff.
Right. You kind of get used to the
you get
failure
you
and
get used to disappointment and
right.
failure, even though you have all this hope. It's just
Right, right, right.
so we were able to freeze 2 embryos,
Okay.
and then 2 months later we did the frozen embryo transfer,
Okay. Yes.
and that was successful.
Yay.
After we left the clinic, after the frozen embryo transfer, like I remember even telling the taxi driver, there are a lot of cobblestone streets in Paris. I
Mm-hmm.
asked him to avoid the cobblestone streets because I didn't want to be jostled.
Right. I get it.
Like things like that. Like I stopped riding my bike. Like I didn't want to move. Like I was nervous on the metro that somebody was going to bump into me.
Right.
I just was in a daze, just like ticking off the
Well, it's
days
like you
on the
kind of want
calendar until I could test.
right. You kind of want to wrap yourself in bubble wrap and just be like, don't
Absolutely.
let me touch anybody until we
Absolutely.
yeah. So then when you found out, how did that feel? When you
Um,
found out it was positive?
we found out it was positive, and so the way the lab did it was you get an email that your results are ready, and then you go online and you look at this PDF, um and it was weird because when I first looked at the PDF, and it shows you the level, the beta number, the level of whatever it is,
The
HCG.
HCG, yeah.
Yeah. um the first thing I saw was a 0.
Mm.
And I thought, oh my God, it didn't work again. It didn't work
Mm-hmm.
again. But then I looked more closely, and what it was doing was giving me the last result for the last blood test I had taken
Okay.
previously, which was the first IVF.
Oh God.
And I was just like, what? Wait, what? That's a 0, but that date's not right. What's going on? And then I looked on the next line and it said 81. And I thought, okay. And then I looked at the date, and at this point, my brain like couldn't really process what was happening. I was like, is this right? Is that an 81? Is that not a 0? Like,
Right.
is
They're
this
like,
is
can you
this
make it more
really happening? Am I reading this right?
right? Give us all these charts and graphs that we have to
I
decipher.
know, and it's this PDF from a lab that has numbers and words you don't understand everywhere, and it's all in French, of course, which is an added
Oh,
level
right.
of potential misunderstanding.
Oh
But I
my
finally
God.
figured it out, and I saw this 81, and I was just in shock. My husband was there looking with me at this PDF, and I was just in shock. And I saw this 81, which is a positive.
Right.
It's like, oh my God, it's a positive. But then immediately my brain went, wait, 81, that's not very high, is it? Like,
Right.
what is that okay? So then of course I started Googling, like, betas at whatever days past transfer.
Right.
But it was positive. I was pregnant, and I was just in disbelief. And I had also, throughout our whole journey, I had never gotten pregnant once. I was not somebody who, got pregnant and lost pregnancies and went through the horror of miscarriage.
Mm-hmm.
I never got pregnant ever.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Um, So it was just, again, walking around in a daze because this number was 81. It was positive, but you had to wait 2 days to take another blood test. And, the number is supposed to double 48 hours later. So
Okay.
48 hours later, I was scheduled for another blood test that morning. And I remember very distinctly the morning of the blood test, you have to go in super early before you eat anything or whatever.
Right.
And I woke up and I had really bad cramps.
Oh God.
I know. And I was literally laying in bed looking at the ceiling thinking, I have to go get a blood test. And these cramps, this can't be good. I mean, I was having really bad cramps, which can be normal. And it turned out was normal. But I just remember going to the lab for this blood test with cramps thinking, oh my God, please, 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 please.
Mm-hmm.
And got that blood test. And the number was 132.
Okay. So it hadn't doubled, but
So it hadn't doubled.
still increasing.
But it's still increasing. So I'm still thinking, oh my God, it's up, but it hasn't doubled. So I waited for the call from the doctor's office too, because they had gotten the same results. And I remember the woman told me, or I got the voicemail, and she said, well, it's 132. She said, it's going up slowly.
Mm-hmm.
And I could just hear this hesitation in her voice, like, this is not the best number ever. So then I had to wait another 48 hours for another blood test, and also having cramps, no bleeding or anything.
Right. But having never been pregnant before, you're probably like, I don't know, like, how am I supposed to feel? Right?
I don't know. Like, this feels like a period.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I went to the bathroom too, I was just petrified. Like every time I had to pee, I would just hold my breath and just pray for no blood.
Same. I'd be like, no, please, please,
no, please no.
Yeah, same.
And then finally, I think after the third or even the fourth blood test, the numbers, went up and did what they were supposed to do. So we went in for the 7-week appointment. Well, first of all, so, you get the first blood test at 4 weeks, basically. And I couldn't wait that I had to wait. I couldn't believe I had to wait another 3 weeks to see the doctor.
There's so much fucking waiting.
I know. Like, I called and they're like, yeah, you're pregnant. Yeah, the blood tests look good. Let's make an appointment for 3 weeks from now. And I remember thinking, what? I want to come over there and party right now. Let's come over and let's do this. I want to see the doctor. I want this to happen.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, come back in 3 weeks. I say, okay.
Yeah.
So I went for the 7-week appointment, and he did the ultrasound, and everything was fine. There was a heartbeat, and which is another thing, that you always have visions of the ultrasound with the heartbeat and holding your husband's hand and, looking into one another's eyes, and which we did some of, but and then the doctor said, so there's a heartbeat, everything looks great, but at your age, you have a 40% chance of miscarrying in the next 2 weeks.
Oh my God.
At which point I'm just like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, what?
Right.
Like, when do I get to do the celebrating? Like, of course,
can you relax and exhale?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because, and also going through infertility, especially in my case, I had never gotten pregnant. It's like, you have this idea, like, once you get pregnant, it's, let the confetti go. We're there. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like step after step after step.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it was just me being naive because obviously through the whole pregnancy I had, I was still bracing myself every time I peed through the whole pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so he told me you have a 40% chance of miscarrying over the next 2 weeks. And I just remember leaving his office like, what?
Mm-hmm. Where's the bubble wrap?
Okay, 2 weeks. And those 2 weeks, it was just more of walking around in a daze. I literally didn't let myself sneeze. Literally. Like, if I felt a sneeze coming on, I held my nose.
Oh my God.
Like, literally. I just, like, no sudden movements, nobody touched me.
Yeah. Had you told your friends and family and stuff at this point, or?
No, well, we hadn't. And I think part of that is a function of just being in a different country. I mean, I think if we had been in the States when this was happening and I was, seeing my really close friends more regularly, probably, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We had friends over here in France, but not the level of closeness we had in the States.
Right.
There was one friend I told as the process was happening, who was a friend in the States who had gone through infertility herself, and had just been an amazing, amazing source of support for me for years at that point through the whole process. Thank you, Julene. Um, she was the only one I told.
Okay.
Like literally in real time as it was happening. And
Yeah.
looking back, I don't know why we didn't share it as it was happening. I think it was just, I don't know, fear of also sharing the failures, I
Yeah.
guess.
I think also too, sometimes it's just exhausting to talk about it, to
It
take
is.
somebody into your journey. And then, if something happens or goes wrong, then you have to, now I have to call this person. And
All
sometimes
right. And then you feel bad because they feel bad.
right. And no one knows what to say and it's awkward. And
It is. And also with friends who haven't gone through it, I mean, their hearts are in the right places, but they just can't understand.
yeah.
They just can't know. They can't understand what you're going through. So it's kind of like sparing them the pain that you're going through. So
Yep.
at the time, no. I mean, everybody knew that we were trying, and that it was an issue, and that
Mm-hmm.
it had been a while, our friends and family. But as far as when the processes were happening, no, we didn't share
Mm-hmm.
that level of detail.
Mm-hmm. So was the next step was the 9-week appointment?
Yeah, so 2 weeks later, we went back for the 9-week appointment. And I mean, I was a wreck, and my husband and I were both so nervous, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my heart is beating right now just
Me too.
remembering.
I have a stomach ache. Even though I know the outcome, I'm like feel sick to my stomach.
I'm sorry.
I'm like right there. I'm right back there in that room with you,
Yeah,
I know.
it was it was nerve-wracking. It was nerve-wracking, and our doctor too was just so sweet, because he obviously knew, what we were feeling, and he was an infertility specialist. So I mean, think about the statistics that he sees. Most of the women he worked with were over 40, like me, and that's not a great success rate. So if you're him, you're much more used to seeing unsuccessful IVFs than IVFs. So, and but he was so nice, and I swear, he also seemed a little nervous for us.
Yeah.
But I got up on the table, and he inserted the ultrasound wand, and as soon as he put it in and saw the heartbeat, he said, "It's okay, everything's okay."
Oh
Like
God.
I was so thankful that he didn't want me to have to wait an extra millisecond
Yeah.
more than was necessary to tell me that everything looked fine.
Yeah. Oh God. That must have felt good. And finally, a little bit at least, you can probably a little bit, right?
Finally, yes,
Yes.
exactly, finally. And so this was at 9 weeks, maybe 10,
Mm-hmm.
9.5, and for some reason, yeah, for him, that was the everything is going to be okay mark.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I graduated. I feel like they should give you a little diploma. Like,
Absolutely. And
you
then you
no
have a
longer
party.
need an infertility specialist here.
Yes. Yes. I remember my person was like, all right, call us when you deliver. And I was like, what? I'm
I
done here?
know. Yeah. I remember he said, as I left his office that day, he said, "Bonne grossesse," which means, have a good pregnancy.
Oh, I love
It was
that.
very sweet. Very, very
Oh.
sweet.
So then how was your pregnancy and everything?
It was great. It was textbook. It was wonderful.
Okay.
Um, let's see, I got pregnant in February. And as I said, we live on an academic schedule. So we decided to spend that summer at the beach in Barcelona.
Amazing.
Yeah, so we just really, really, really focused on just relaxing. We normally go back to the States every summer, but I didn't even want to fly.
Mm-hmm.
I did not want to get on a plane.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so we decided to stay in Europe and go to Barcelona and just take it day by day and just chill out.
So wonderful. And did you know the gender of the baby at that point or no?
Let's see. I found out. let's see, it was the end of June, however far along that was. I don't know, whatever anatomy scan
Okay.
where you normally get that information. Although I went back to Paris for some of the medical appointments from Barcelona, and my husband did not come with me for that particular appointment. So I didn't want to find out without him. So what I did was I bought a card and I wrote fille et garçon, girl or boy in French,
Uh-huh.
a little box next to each of them. And I gave the card to the doctor and I said, could you please check off the right box and don't let me see it and put it in this envelope?
Oh, good.
So we found out, but I waited till I got back to Barcelona and we opened the card together and
Okay.
found
Yeah.
out that it was a garçon.
A garçon.
Yes.
So can you tell me a little bit more about like having an early, like an infant in France, and a little bit more about what that's like? I think
Yeah.
there's 16 weeks paid maternity leave, right?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing over here, especially
Awesome.
for being an American going through it here. I mean, for the French, it's normal, of course, the amazing medical care and support that you get both
Mhm.
before and through your pregnancy. But for an American, I was like, what? 16 weeks of paid maternity leave? And yeah, and that's 4 weeks before your due date, and it's obligatory, so you have to stop work a month before you're due,
Wow.
which is so great because
It's so great.
it's so great for the mother. They're, the thought here is just, you're about to make a human. Let's just relax for a little bit before that happens,
Yes.
just go home, stop working. So 4 weeks before your due date, and then 12 weeks after.
Uh-huh.
And then that's all fully paid, and it's of course mandated by law.
So
And
wonderful.
yeah, and the prenatal care is fantastic, and it's all covered, all the classes and everything.
Mm-hmm.
um Everything is covered. The hospital stay was completely covered.
Mm-hmm. And you get to stay a little bit longer in the hospital too than here,
Yeah,
right?
in the
Here they're
States it's
like,
just
don't let
like,
the door get you on the way out. Like
yeah,
throw
which I
you in.
totally don't understand, because a lot of people just end up going back with things
Right.
like, with problems like jaundice and things like that. But no, for a first baby here, it's 4 nights for your first baby, 4 nights in the hospital, and for subsequent babies, 3 nights.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up staying 5 nights just because my son had a little trouble getting the hang of breastfeeding, so I stayed an extra night. Um, but it's fantastic. So I had 5 days in the hospital where literally press a button and somebody would come answer any questions I had, bathe the baby, help me with breastfeeding.
Mm-hmm.
It's fantastic. The
Mm-hmm.
support here is amazing.
That's so wonderful. So
It's great.
tell me about your son. What's his name, and what's your favorite part of being his mommy?
His name is Bennett, and
Okay.
he's amazing. He's wonderful.
And
He's
how
three
old
and a
is he
half
now?
now. He's three
Okay.
and a half. He loves trucks and hugs,
Oh,
and he's just the sweetest thing ever.
oh, I'm so
Sorry,
happy
I'm
for
about
you.
to cry talking
No,
about
I
it.
know. I get the same way, tearing up. And I have almost 3.5 year old too, my little guy. So we were going through this around the same time.
Yeah.
Any advice maybe for someone listening who's having a hard time about just the process, or maintaining hope, or kind of anything that helped you get through all of this stuff that you wanted to share?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so much. I mean, the the biggest thing I think is just, you're not broken.
Yeah.
That's what I would tell somebody going through this, because you go through this and you just feel broken. You just feel like you're not a whole person, you're not a whole woman. It's That's not the case. You're not broken. it's it's something that most often can be fixed medically. I mean, when you have bad vision and you have to get glasses, you don't feel like you're broken, right?
Right.
In a lot of cases, you can do it. Don't just keep at it. And I
Hmm.
think also, I think there's a baby out there for everybody, even if it's not the path to get to that baby that you had envisioned.
Hmm.
There's a baby out there. It might not be how you thought the baby would come or when, but I think there's a baby out there for everybody who wants one.
Hmm. Hmm. I love that. Oh, this is so good, Ellie. Thank you Thank you so much. I'm sorry I made you cry.
That's okay. I'm a little bit emotional. My grandmother died yesterday, and
I'm so sorry.
it's okay. It's okay. She was 103 years old.
Oh, wow. That's
And
amazing.
I'm a little bit emotional to begin with. Yes, she was 100 years older than my son.
Oh my gosh. Is she in the States?
She was in the States.
Okay.
Yeah, she
Did
was
your
in
son get to meet her?
Baltimore. They did meet, and that
Oh,
was
cool.
also amazing for me. And yeah.
100 years older than your son. I love that.
Yes, and she died
Oh my
yesterday at
God.
103, and it's the whole process is linked emotionally too. I didn't get pregnant till she was 99 years old and almost turning 100, and I remember just being so grateful that she could meet my son
That's so cool.
at
Oh, wow.
100.
How
And
special.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and telling your story. And this is
Thank
great.
you. Thank you.
And,
Thank you for doing this.
And thank you to our mutual friend for introducing us, Sarah.
Yeah, shout out to Sarah.
Shout out. She's the greatest. And I hope to come back to Paris sometime and maybe we can grab a coffee.
I would love to.
A glass of wine.
I would love to. Probably more so a glass of wine, yes.
Okay, done. Hey again, guys. Thank you so much for listening, and thanks to Elli for being so honest and open about her story. How cool is that bit about her grandmother? I just love that so much. So I'm so happy I got to meet her. And again, thanks to our friend Sarah for hooking us up. Thanks to all of you for listening. And if you haven't yet, head over to the podcast page and do a quick review and rate the podcast so that we can get a lot more exposure. We want this to keep growing. So thank you, guys. Talk to you next time.